So here's what you can do with a skill saw and a little bit of creativity. So I've got this 100-year-old door that I took off of a house, and today I'm going to turn it into something very interesting. I'm going to bring you along for the ride. I'm also going to be doing a review on this skill saw. I purchased this about a year ago, and I was so pleased with it that I actually bought a second one. So with the help of this saw and just some simple hand tools, we're going to get started on this project of mine. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to find the center point of the top of this door. So I'm just going to measure across and then divide it by 2, and then that'll be my center point. And I'm going to draw a line from the center all the way down to each side. And I'm going to do it on this side as well. Okay, as you can see, I've got my line drawn all the way up my door, okay, where it peaks at the top. And I've done it down the other side as well. Now, something very important. Take you a magnet, and before we start cutting anything, you need to trace this line to make sure there's no nails in the path of our saw blade. I'll trace it all the way down. I'm not picking up anything yet. Got something right there, so I need to watch out for that. And going all the way down, looks like that's the only place right there I need to worry about when I'm sawing. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side to make sure that there's nothing that's going to damage my saw blade. And of course in the process I don't want the saw to jump and hit me as well. Feel a little something right there. That's why it's always good to trace your path on anything where you think there might be some old fasteners or old nails in. Oh, there's a nail right there. Alright, so now I know what to look out for when I'm cutting. Okay, I've got my door secured on my workbench with a clamp, and I made sure that my blade is not going to touch my workbench. And I've got a piece of cardboard under there to protect my workbench as well. Now what I have here, I just have some random stuff in my garage, a couple of empty tanks, cinder blocks, and some boxes. It's going to catch this piece right here when it falls, so it just don't free fall to the floor. And I've got my magnet, and I have double checked my line to make sure I'm not going to hit anything with my blade. And I have pinpointed the fasteners that my magnet has picked up on, and they're going to be just out of the way of my line. When in doubt, if you think you're going to hit something with your power saw, just use a handsaw for those questionable places. Now it's time to make my first cut. And one thing I liked about this saw right off the bat is the fact that it has a quick release for the depth of the blade, which is this right here. So on some saws there's knobs that you have to turn. This is actually just a quick release lever, and then you can actually move the blade up and down. Then once you got it to the place where you want it, you just push that lever back down. And you never want to cut any deeper than you have to. And the width of this door is about 1.25 inches, so that I'm going to set my blade depth about 1.5 inches, which I can easily do because it has a scale on the back side. And then of course a real quick way to adjust your blade is just put it up against the piece that you're sawing. Then you can raise and lower the blade accordingly. Just push your lever back down. Okay, always a good idea to have a good pair of safety glasses on when you're using any type of power saws. Alright, first cut done. I did not hit any obstructions, and my little apparatus caught the piece that I cut, so it didn't hit the floor and damage anything. Okay, second cut accomplished. I just love looking at the craftsmanship of these old doors from so long ago. You can really see how solid these doors are built. I just love looking at the joinery. So the next thing to do is I'm going to take this 1x4 and I'm going to split it right down the middle. Some people call it ripping. And I'm going to show you a trick about how I do that. So what I've done is I've got 3 boards that I want to go ahead and split right down the middle. So I've made my line halfway through the board on each one by just taking a measurement across the whole width of the board, then dividing by 2. Then what I've done is I'm on the back side of the board, and in 3 places I'm screwing down some scrap wood on the back side with 1-inch screws in my case. If you're using thicker screws, scrap wood, you're going to need to use longer screws. And I'm just screwing it down into place, making sure that my screws are not in the way of my saw blade. So in each piece of my scrap wood, I've got them separated so my saw blade will not hit it as I'm ripping these pieces of wood. And just simply driving my screws down. Okay, then we unplug our saw for safety, of course, and we're just going to take our saw blade and we're going to make it very shallow. I'm going to lock it down, and then that is just enough to clear those boards. And it's okay, it's going to cut right through our scrap pieces of wood on all three places, right there, and this one too. Now halfway through my cut, all I'm going to have to do is reposition my clamps from right here to more towards the center of the boards, just so I can finish my cuts out. One thing for sure, this saw has not let me down on this project so far. It has done these rips beautifully. And now all I gotta do is just flip it over and take my screws out, and I'll have 6 perfectly sized strips of wood. Okay, and that worked out really well. I won't need all 6 of these pieces for this one project, but if I plan on doing more projects in the future, I'll need the other ones too. Using this scrap wood and screwing it together really comes in handy when you don't have a table saw to do your rip cuts like this. A lot of folks think it's impossible to do these long rip cuts with a regular skill saw, but there you go. Now you know how to do it. So I've got the cutout from my door on the bench, and now I've laid my trim pieces lengthwise along each side right here, and one on the far end down there. Next thing to do is I need to cut my trim pieces to length, and the same for the short piece on the bottom. Always remember, measure twice and cut once. And to make things simple, I just cut all my 3 boards at one time. Just line my mark up on all 3 boards, so where I need them cut, clamp it down to the bench. And all it is to it. Okay, you can see that I've got this thing roughly screwed together, and the reason I've done this is so my door will stay relatively stable. Because when we made these cuts on the door, the pieces to the door want to kind of wiggle around a little bit. So it's almost by necessity that I have to put these trim pieces on here before I start moving it around too much. And I wanted to do it before I started sanding it. And you can see I've already cut my angles. They come up to the top. And now I'm doing the same thing for the bottom trim piece, just using a simple handsaw. And I'm just going to flip it around and do the other side. Whenever I do these little small angle cuts, I generally just like to use a handsaw. It needs to be a little bit more accurate. Alrighty. Okay, and I got that lower trim piece installed as well. And again, these are just on there temporarily. The screws are kind of halfway hung out. And another reason I wanted to go and put these trim pieces on now is because it makes it a little easier to go ahead and do my sanding. So that's the next step. I'm going to sand these trim pieces. And now I'm actually using a very coarse sandpaper on my sander. This is a 80 grit, so very rough, and that's on purpose. I'm not going to sand it down any finer because this is going to be a rustic look. I just really want to get the rough spots out of this trim, and then after I'm done with the sanding, then what we're going to do is we'll take it apart and we're going to go ahead and put a coat of stain on our trim and also put a little color on our door. And here's a little bonus tip for you. And what I have found very helpful, just get you a couple pieces of sandpaper and glue it onto a piece of scrap wood, And then you've just created a little miniature sanding block. Comes in very handy. That way you can get into those little crevices that a sander just can't get into. And now that my trim pieces are off, I'm going to put a light coat of white paint on the front side of this door. Okay, and now I've got my door painted like I like, and just wanted to dust it with a light coat of white paint. I wanted to still be able to see the wood grain since it's such a unique door, being so old and everything. And as you can see, the pieces come right apart with those trim pieces off. Now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be staining my trim pieces while I'm waiting for the door to dry. And then I'll reassemble everything. And I'm just simply doing this with a paper towel. Seems to be the most easy way. And then it's just a matter of putting everything back together. Okay, so now that I got this part done, got it pretty much how I want it, trim pieces are installed, everything's painted, now it's time to focus on the stand. And you might have guessed it at this point, I'm making a Christmas tree. Okay, I'm going to be making my stand out of a 2x4 and a 2x6. I'll go ahead and make my marks here. Always helps to have a square. And I'm also going to make these little dog ears here, using my square, of course. Okay, I'm going to first go ahead and cut this first little dog ear off. Adjust my blade, my saw is unplugged. Okay, I got my depth right where I want it. The thing I like about this blade right out of the box, this is a very universal blade. You can cut through plywood, 2x4s, hardwood, softwood, doesn't really seem to matter. There's other blades you can get to go on it that's more specific for specific applications, but right out of the box, this universal blade seems to do pretty good. Alright, let's plug my saw in and do my first cut here. I've got my work all clamped down and got my safety glasses on. Let's let her go. And now one thing I learned a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure my granddad is the one who taught this to me. Anytime you're having multiple cuts, it's a good idea to go ahead and cut all your boards at the same time by stacking them together. That way it supports your saw more, because the more surface area that you have in general to support your saw, the better the cut's going to be. So since I have two boards, the 2x4 and the 2x6 that I got to cut anyway, I'm just lining them up and just making sure my mark is in line, and I'm just going to make that one cut. Okay, and I've got everything all clamped down, and I've got the end pieces supported with a box on some center blocks because I don't want these pieces to fall and hit the floor and become damaged. I think we're ready to go. Always be aware of where your cord is when you're cutting, by the way. You never want it to be in front of your blade. Always make sure you have plenty of slack and let it be dangling behind the saw. Perfect. I'll go ahead and cut this dog ear off. Okay, here's another opportunity to go ahead and make one simultaneous cut across both boards. And for my last cut. And then tentatively, this is what I have in mind. All I got to do is just sand it and fasten it all together with a few screws and some glue. And the beauty about this project is you don't have to get everything perfectly sanded because I'm after that rustic look anyway. So we're just getting the rough edges off, and that's pretty much it. And now it's just a matter of screwing everything together. I always like to pre-drill my holes. Makes it a whole lot easier, and it makes it a whole lot more secure when you're screwing things together with drywall screws. And as a simple trick to make this a really secure joint is once you've pre-drilled your hole all the way through, go back through the top board with a little bit bigger drill bit. That way what will happen is the screw will free spin in this top part while it digs in to the wood behind it, and it will really pull that wood towards the back part. Very nice. That's not going anywhere. And it kind of goes without saying, you want this part right here to be fairly level up and down. And by the way, I'm using number 8 2.5-inch drywall screws. And now the reason I'm doing this and I'm only putting one screw on each leg is because now I can go through and actually move these up and down if I need to get things perfect so it's not wobbling on the floor, things like that. I'll just put me another screw down at the bottom to secure it. Well, that's close enough for government work, I think. I'll go ahead and fasten in my other screws at the bottom. On this bottom hole here, since I'm going into the end grain of the wood behind it, I think I'm going to use a 3-inch screw instead of a 2.5-inch. And last screw. Okay, now one thing left to do is go ahead and put a coat of stain on it. Alright, that ought to do it. We're just going to let it dry and we'll attach it to our tree in the morning. Okay, so the only thing left to do now is to join my stand to my tree. So I'm going to drill 3 holes, one there, there, and there, and then I'm just going to fasten it all together with drywall screws. Alright, I've got my tree braced while I come around to the back and put my screws in. Okay, this one is done. I'm very satisfied with that. That stand is holding the tree up really good. I'm very happy with it. Now it's time to work on the other part. I'm not going to show you the step-by-step on this one because it's pretty much the same, but I'll show you the end result. Okay, so the one thing I will show you about this part is that I have to join these 2 pieces of door together, and I'm going to do that with pocket hole screws. I think 4 will do the trick, 1 there, 2 midway, and 1 up at the very top. Okay, so I got a pocket hole drill bit. You can use this with a jig or you can just freehand it. Okay, I think I'm going to put my first one right here. And the easiest way to use this drill bit without a jig is to start straight up and down like this. And then when you got it seated pretty good, you're going to go ahead and start cocking it to one side. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up that hole with a regular drill bit. Not everyone does it this way, but this is just the way I do it. And I'm just going to make sure that hole goes all the way through. And I'm going to separate this door so you'll know what I'm talking about. If you look close, you'll be able to see the drill bit come out to the other side. And now it's just a matter of repeating it. Same as before, I'm going to follow it through with a regular drill bit. And now for my last screw. Alright, okay, and now I've got it joined together, and now we're just going to proceed on with painting it and putting our trim pieces on, just like we did on the other one. Okay, so I got everything painted and stained, and I've got my trim pieces inserted, and now the only thing left to do is make my stand. Everything is going together nicely. Okay, second stand is complete and all stained. Alright, and now I have my second tree installed on my stand. Okay, and both trees are complete. You can see how the second tree is very much like the first, except you have the cool hardware in the center. You can even see where the hinges are. And I even left the cool little rusty nails in there, just like they were when I got the old doors. And so here's what you can do with a skill saw and a little bit of creativity. And as you can see, these are some pretty tall doors. I'm about 6 foot tall, a little above, and these are about 2 feet above me. So these are about 8 foot tall trees. So what do I think about this saw? I'll tell you what, it really did the trick with cutting up these doors and all the trim pieces and the wood to make the stands. It cut through hardwood just as easy as if it was going through softwood. And these doors are definitely hardwood, and this proved it cut right through it with no problem. This is a 13 amp motor, and that is an industry standard that you want to look for when you buy a circular saw. So I hope this has helped your purchasing decision a little bit if you're in the market to buy a circular saw. And in addition, I hope it's inspired you to go out and do something creative. And it just goes to show you can do something like this without having complicated tools. Thanks for watching. And for all you guys who are interested in the tools that I use to do this build with, in addition to the circular saw, just look down in the description below. I'll include a link to all the tools that I use that you can purchase very inexpensively on Amazon. Thanks for watching.